as the directions for Part C are being read. Part C. Directions. In this part of the test, you will hear several short talks. After each talk, you will hear some questions. The talks and the questions will not be repeated. After you hear a question, read the 4 possible answers in your test book and choose the best answer. Then, on your answer sheet, find the number of the question and fill in the space that corresponds to the letter of the answer you have chosen. Here is an example. On the recording, you hear, "Listen to an instructor talk to his class about a television program."
I'd like to tell you about an interesting TV program that'll be shown this coming Thursday. It'll be on from 9 to 10 p.m. on Channel 4. It's part of a series called Mysteries of Human Biology. The subject of the program is the human brain, how it functions and how it can malfunction. Topics that will be covered are dreams, memory, and depression. These topics are illustrated with outstanding computer animation that makes the explanations easy to follow. Make an effort to see this show. Since we've been studying the nervous system in class, I know you'll find it very helpful.
Now, listen to a sample question. What is the main purpose of the program? In your test book, you read, A. To demonstrate the latest use of computer graphics. B. To discuss the possibility of an economic depression. C. To explain the workings of the brain. D. To dramatize a famous mystery story. The best answer to the question, "What is the main purpose of the program?" is C. To explain the workings of the brain. Therefore, the correct choice is C. Now listen to another sample question. Why does the speaker recommend watching the program? In your test book, you read, A. It is required of all science majors. B. It will never be shown again. C. It can help viewers improve their memory skills. D. It will help with coursework. The best answer to the question, "Why does the speaker recommend watching the program?" is D. It will help with coursework. Therefore, the correct choice is D. Now we will begin Part C with the first talk.
Questions 38 through 41. Listen to part of a lecture in a marketing class.
Senses play an important role in consumer decision-making. Shoppers like to sniff a piece of fish or listen to a stereo before buying it. But the power of touch was not fully understood by researchers until recently. Evidence is showing that consumers who are able to handle merchandise are more likely to buy it and pay more for it. Shoppers touch for various reasons. There's fact-finding touch, like turning a food container to read the list of ingredients, or picking an item up to assess its specific attributes, such as weight, texture, or temperature. There's also touch for its own sake, because it feels nice to say, run your fingers along a shiny table. Psychologically, touching an item fosters a sense of ownership, which makes it more difficult to resist buying it. So it makes sense when retailers display sweaters on shelves rather than in protective plastic bags. One unexpected finding of this research is that, in terms of generating sales, imagined touch is just as effective as actual touch. That's good to know if you're writing descriptions of items sold online. The need to touch varies. Shoppers whose need to touch is high, they tend to buy more when touching is encouraged. In one experiment, researchers placed a Feel the Freshness sign on a fruit display. All shoppers were more likely to touch the fruit when the sign was there than when it wasn't. But shoppers who ranked higher in the need to touch were more likely to buy the fruit they touched.
Number 38. What is the main purpose of the lecture? Number 39. According to the professor, what psychological feeling do shoppers tend to have when they touch an item of merchandise? Number 40. What does the professor imply about marketers who sell items online? Number 41. What does the professor emphasize as an important characteristic of shoppers? Questions 42 through 46. Listen to part of a talk in a history class.
Let me warn you against a mistake that historians often make. They sometimes assume that people in the past used the same concepts we do. There's a wonderful example that made news in the history of mathematics a while ago. It concerns an ancient Mesopotamian tablet that had some calculations on it. Sophisticated calculations that looked like measurements of triangles. So that's what many historians assumed they were. And if the Mesopotamians knew how to use these calculations, and historians started thinking that they did, that meant their math was incredibly advanced. Well, it turns out that the idea that Mesopotamians used sophisticated methods to calculate the measurements of triangles is probably wrong. Why do we think that? Because we discovered that Mesopotamians didn't know how to measure angles, which is a crucial element in the whole process of triangle calculations. Apparently, the Mesopotamians had a number of other uses for the calculations on the tablet. These other uses were important, but they were not related to triangles. And so these tablets, in all likelihood, were practice sheets, if you like, for doing math exercises. In all likelihood, it was the ancient Greeks who first calculated the measurements of triangles. And this was hundreds of years after the Mesopotamians.
Number 42. What is the main purpose of the talk? Number 43. What was on the Mesopotamian tablet mentioned in the talk? Number 44. According to the professor, what had been assumed about the Mesopotamians? Number 45. According to the professor, how was the tablet most likely used by the Mesopotamians? Number 46. What does the professor imply about the ancient Greeks? Questions 47 through 50. Listen to part of a talk in a biology class.
A really surprising discovery was made up in Canada recently. Some fossilized animal footprints they found in some sandstone there. So why is that exciting? Well, this sandstone is really old, and so the footprints are too. Older, by about 40 million years, they think, than any footprints ever found of animals that walked on land. Since we believe that land animals originally emerged from the sea, well, this shows the move from sea to land happened way earlier than we thought, 40 million years earlier, and that's a lot. And finding these fossils was sheer luck. There were these Canadian stone cutters cutting up sandstone to use as a building material, and apparently this stone with the fossil prints wasn't smooth enough to use. So the workers rejected it for building use, and the discarded stone lay there for years before anyone who could recognize its true importance was lucky enough to lay eyes on it. Now, how do we know these impressions were made by animals on land, not still back in the sea walking on the sea floor? Well, the footprints look too deep to be made underwater, 'cause underwater you're buoyant and your footsteps are lighter. So any tracks wouldn't be as deep. But how could sea animals end up doing better by moving onto land? Well, the sea was full of dangerous predators that would attack their young. So one theory is that land offered them a safer place to reproduce, a greater chance to have their young survive.
Number 47. What is the talk mainly about? Number 48. According to the professor, what question does the discovery in Canada help answer? Number 49. Why does the professor mention stone cutters? Number 50. What evidence is given to show whether the footprints were made by animals on land or underwater?
This is the end of Section 1, Listening Comprehension. Stop work on Section 1. End of recording.